Have you seen this man before? If you have, then you know when this man is holding the football, something for the other team has gone drastically wrong. He is one of the four horsemen who are about to bring the apocalypse to the San Francisco 49ers. Great story that is Brock Purdy. Only something that pure could defeat something so evil as this story that is Brock Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant and the rookie winning the Super Bowl. That doesn't happen in the NFL. Hassan Reddick and company are here to change that story and reverse that narrative. That's Hassan Reddick, by the way. Welcome to Hassan Reddick's world, because the Philadelphia Eagles are no freaking joke. Hey, we've got a parlay for you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to build a 3-leg parlay for you. Then we're going to get crazy. So you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, do all that. We're going to add a couple of legs here. I've got some other stuff I need to tell you about, but we're going to get crazy before we get out of here. Let us start with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, that's at -2.5. So first thing you should be asking yourself is, well, can I move this? Can I gain anything from this? You can. 14% of games land on 3. 3 had a historic run this year as far as a key number is concerned. I'm okay laying the 2.5, knowing that I'm going to have some other stuff happen here. So laying the 2.5 first and foremost is where I'll begin. The Eagles are the better football team. They have the better quarterback. And ultimately, when you start to look at where advantages are, disadvantages are, what's going to be the biggest problem for San Francisco is keeping up with that offense. You're going to guarantee some scoring drives for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's kind of like, I'm a little shaky here on the Niners side. Doesn't mean that they can't score. They haven't scored. They've been able to before, don't get me wrong, but
Mike just loves saying that mics are hot.
That mic branding is strong. Hello, everyone. It is a Saturday afternoon here, but you are dying for some tournament strategy. Have no fears. You are, in fact, in the correct place. It is time to talk about it all. 2-game slate coming up tomorrow. 2 of the biggest games we will have this entire NFL year. The last multi-game slate of the year as well. So going to be a lot of fun digging into this one. I am Chris Spags, joined today by a man who's known as the Showdown Shaman. I think a lot of the same principles are going to carry over today for a 2-game slate. He's Neil Orfield, one of the winningest players in DFS. I'll tout you. You're here, Neil, right before the intro. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm ready to talk a little Sunday football. This is exciting times. I love playoff football. I love talking playoff. DFS is always fun when you get these, smaller player pools. It's fun to make little different lineups, change your rules a little bit in your correlation. So this is fun. How are you doing today, Spags?
I'm feeling good. I think it's exciting to have, a nice 2-gamer here. I have felt throughout the course of the season that the 2-3-game slates are one thing that people sometimes don't get in terms of the tournament approach. So I think it's fun to talk about this one because I think sometimes people feel like when they're doing these shows in particular, or when they are playing the slates even, it's like, oh, I don't have that many options. It's not that fun. Yet when the field's going to congregate around a Dallas Goedert, going to congregate around a Jamar Chase, that does give you some opportunities to get different. And I feel like that's where you actually have a shot to win, and you're not worried about getting in all these crappy guys. Like, because everybody's going to have to get in the crappy guys to win.
That's right. We're all playing crappy guys together in this one. So we're all having the same struggle, no advantages for anybody. So this will be fun.
Yeah, so let's talk about the slate overview here. And of course, guys, if you want to hit the like button now, it would help us out a bunch. Trying to fight that algorithm as always here on YouTube, but also just helps us get seen by new people, helps us bring good info to new people. And that's what it's always about here on Stokastic. But slate overview here, we got 22 implied points for the Niners, 24.5 for Philadelphia. On the Bengals side, 23.5 implied points. Kansas City, 25 implied points. On a cruncher, Neil, it does seem like you are getting a lot of Bengals fed to you overall. Thinking the crunch I did right before the show is getting 18 out of 25 lineups with 3 or more Bengals. So it feels like they're an obvious team to stack in a spot where a slightly elevated total against Kansas City and also a matchup probably against the softest defense overall. The thing that worries me is that you go on DraftKings, you see that green number next to Joe Burrow going, the only QB going against a team that actually is going to be a positive DVP matchup. We don't care about DVP here, but I do care about all the casual players going to jump in there. Do you feel like this is going to be a slate, Neil, where there's going to be a copious amount of Bengals that are going to be kind of everywhere in everybody's lineups?
Yeah, I think so. Probably. I mean, maybe we'll get some more casual fans who just love the Eagles and want to play 6 Eagles in a lineup, or 49ers, whatever. I'm not sure. Maybe that'll be a factor. But yeah, I think it's going to be, as you say, Cruncher is going to give you a lot of Bengals. They are going to project well, just because they are all great. They've got a lot of players who are going to project well on any given slate. But then you add in the fact that, yeah, as you said, really the only kind of weak defense here is that Kansas City defense. Looking through, particularly like since week 13, every one of these defenses, San Francisco is second in terms of overall DVOA. We've got Cincinnati 10th in terms of overall DVOA. Philly is 4th in terms of overall DVOA, and then Kansas City, kind of the outlier, at 18th. They're still kind of middle of the pack, but the only real defense that you want to be targeting here is the Kansas City defense. All these other defenses, again, these are of course DVOA numbers, I should say, from Football Outsiders, Spags' company. So those are stats that I use pretty frequently here. So it makes sense that people are going to want to play some Cincy. It's a great offense against a bad defense. You don't really have that any other spot, but we do have a number of great offenses here. Obviously, every one of these offenses can go off any given day, even in tough matchups. So yeah, I think most of my lineups probably honestly will have at least one Bengals player in them, but I don't think you need to only play Bengals players. Don't be too afraid of these matchups because you only have 4 teams to choose from.
Let's talk about another thing that people might be afraid of here, and it does interest me because I do see Patrick Mahomes not coming up a lot with the Stokastic projections, which we'll talk about coming up here. You can still get those 5 days free of Stokastic data, so we'll hit on that coming up in a little bit. If you guys are curious about how to get that data into your life. But I do think, Neil, on this particular slate, it feels like Patrick Mahomes, a guy that normally about as public of a player as can be. I personally feel like Joe Burrow is taking that spot of being the public player that people love. And, Mike and I were talking before the show. Our producer, Mike, here is helping us keep this going. I was talking about on TikTok. You go on TikTok, everybody loves Joe Burrow. Like the women love Joe Burrow for, the obvious reasons of him being handsome, but the guys love Joe Burrow. He's cool. He's Joe Shiesty, all that stuff. And it feels to me like Patrick Mahomes with the ankle injury, with all of that, with the fact too, that the Chiefs probably have underperformed in terms of creating value for multiple pass catchers. I think there's a nice opportunity to go to Mahomes this week. Do you feel that way too, or perhaps a little too much steam going Burrow's way? And the best QB in the league is the one that might be on their own.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just looking. So I've been playing a lot of. I talk about best ball in every single stream I do these days. I guess it's not best ball, but on Underdog, I've been doing the drafts of this conference championship, and pretty clearly, Patrick Mahomes always the third quarterback off the board after Burrow, after Hurts. Nobody's wanting to draft Patrick Mahomes, even after we saw him looking healthy. We've had some videos of he looks like he's running just fine. Like that was kind of the concern coming in was he might be dealing with an injury, but at least in those drafts, people still seem a little bit wary of playing Patrick Mahomes. And if the field's not going to be there, yeah, sign me up for some Patrick Mahomes. I'm with you. I think that he could come in very low owned. Of course, people still do love Patrick Mahomes, but as you say, Joe Burrow definitely picking up some of that steam. Even the NFL's official, I saw this on Twitter. I didn't fact check this, but according to something I saw on Twitter, the NFL's actual handle is loving Joe Burrow. They're all about talking about how great Joe Burrow is. Everybody loves Joe Burrow. I think you're right that he's kind of got some steam, and it makes sense. He's playing against this Chiefs defense that it's a great spot for him. He's a fun player. It's a fun offense, but yeah, if this Chiefs offense is going to be overlooked, which we are actually anticipating, yeah, sign me up for Patrick Mahomes. I think he's probably the player that I'm going to be the most over the field on. Actually, I'm almost certain that he's going to be the player that I am the most over the field on. So absolutely with you on stacking up some Chiefs.
And we're going to talk more about, the contrarian plays here, but I do think we've seen a lot of success recently for Travis Kelce. Obviously, another player, if you go on the underdog drafts out there, some of the other products out there in the fantasy space, you are going to find a lot of love for Travis Kelce and pretty much all of them. That said, Juju running a bunch of routes, Kadarius Toney getting fed touches. Mecole Hardman, I haven't checked the status yet. Has he been officially ruled in or out yet? Have you seen?
No, he has not been officially ruled in, or I think he was still limited in practice on Friday, but he's questionable.
Yeah.
I would lean towards he's going to play, but it's not a strong lean.
Yeah. So point being, though, there's a lot of guys in that Chiefs rotation who perhaps cannibalizes from them a little bit, a bit of each other there, where you do have Hardman coming in. He was a guy who was kind of generating a lot of red zone, end zone targets throughout the year. Then we saw McKinnon have some more upside. We've seen Kadarius Toney lately have upside, but I still think Juju's out there running routes. I mean, MVS, for as bad as he's been, he's also out there running routes. Do you see any approach, Neil, where you would go to a Chiefs stack, fade Kelce in that stack, and try to get two of these other guys in there in the hopes that they do suck enough production away from Kelce, who's probably going to have a good day regardless, but maybe not a tournament winning day?
Spags, I've been doing it all damn year, stacking up trying to stack the Chiefs without Travis Kelce. It has not worked out, I think, all year, maybe once. I don't know. I don't think it's worked at all to just stack the Chiefs without Kelce. Yes, I'm going to do it again. It's a 2-game slate. It certainly is going to happen some of the time that the Chiefs offense goes off without just going to Kelce over and over. So yeah, absolutely, I'm willing to create some Chiefs stacks. You can go back to Jerick McKinnon. I actually think he's been people have been lamenting Jerick McKinnon, the fish play on Twitter for the past, 2 months because he's been getting these touchdowns. Finally, now I think we might be in a spot where we can start thinking about Jerick McKinnon again. He finally has let us down a couple games in a row, and Mahomes does like to target him. Wouldn't shock me to see Jerick McKinnon getting in there in a Mahomes stack. He could obviously score a receiving touchdown, so I don't mind that kind of stack at all. But yeah, absolutely, I'm willing to play Mahomes with Juju. I would say I still consider Juju to be the number one wide receiver, obviously not counting Kelce, for the Chiefs. He is running the most routes typically. You could consider MVS if Mecole Hardman is in there. He's in play. Kadarius Toney still not playing a ton of snaps. I think he was still like 30% the last time out, but or maybe that's routes run. However, he is very involved in the red zone. Obviously, somebody you can play as well. You could throw in a Justin Watson I believe Justin Watson is also questionable. Another player you consider. Maybe even we try everybody's favorite Sky Moore. So yeah, there are a number of different ways you can play this. It's a 2-game slate. You got to get a little bit weird somewhere. So absolutely, I'm willing to play some Mahomes stacks without Travis Kelce. How do you feel about it?
I'm with you entirely. I mean, again, this is a tournament strategy show. Like if you're playing cash, you're probably playing Kelce and Goddard, I think, or maybe Goddard and Hurst based on how those projections work. But point being, like, I think that Kelce is going to be the ownership play that you're going to have in cash. For a tournament, like, yes, I think Kelce is a great play. Like we have Sean V in the chat making the same good points that you're going to hear about Kelce. He's now the best playoff tight end officially for 3 years in a row, probably the best in history, maybe aside from Gronk. I think that's something that people are certainly top of mind. That said, it's top of mind for everybody. That's been a talking point on ESPN this week. It's been a talking point across football media. We all know Kelce's good. He's coming off of an outlier game. you see him in this spot here where he's going to pick up a lot of ownership naturally. He's also going to pick up ownership because he's probably the Chiefs target that only people trust. And I think at this point, it's probably worth trying Juju. It's probably worth trying MVS even. Obviously Hardman, if he's in there, like any of these guys Neil just mentioned, I'm willing to cycle him in and out just because I think there is still enough for probability. And Neil, you talk about it a lot with the showdowns. Like it's one game. The volatility in one game is so huge in the NFL. So Travis Kelce will still be the greatest playoff tight end after this game, even if he goes 4 for 80 and doesn't win you a tournament.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that I don't want to play Travis Kelce. I'm going to be playing tons of Travis Kelce, but as you said, this is a tournament strategy show. People love to watch the box scores. They think what happened last game is going to happen this game. Travis Kelce, of course, targeted, I don't know, like 20 times. No, I don't know what the number was, but targeted a ton, had a ton of receptions in that last game. Certainly that is within the range of outcomes. Maybe Mahomes does just lean on Travis Kelce, but we gotta try to get a little bit different when we're playing in large field tournaments. The easiest way to get to the top without bringing everybody along with you is to play some unique plays. And I think one way to get unique is to play Patrick Mahomes without Travis Kelce in your lineup, to stack it up a little bit differently and hope that, finally MVS has that 60-yard touchdown, which is going to prevent Travis Kelce from having, 4 more receptions on that drive. So definitely a way to get unique is to get different with your Chiefs pass catchers in some lineups. But yeah, as you said, if you're playing cash, I think probably playing Kelce. I haven't actually run lineups yet, but he's going to project extremely well. He's going to be the top projected tight end. If you're playing a small field GPP, certainly. I mean, even in a large field GPP, feel free to play Travis Kelce. We're just saying in a large field tournament, it makes sense to, in some lineups, stack up Patrick Mahomes with other pass catchers and just hope that he goes to those pass catchers instead of Travis Kelce. Should not shock anybody if that happens. It will shock some people if it does happen, but it shouldn't, because we're still dealing with a small sample size. Yes, we have 19 games the Chiefs have played this year. I guess 18 games so far this year for the Chiefs. It's still a relatively small sample size, and people are going to just assume, no, Patrick Mahomes can't do it with other receivers. He can. He should at some point. Maybe it'll be this game.
Yep, I'm with you on that. So I think that's the approach there for that game. Let's talk more about the Philadelphia San Francisco side. And again, guys, if you could hit that like button down below, we appreciate it a bunch here. Obviously competing against a lot of channels out there, and we're here on a Saturday grinding football just like you guys are. So we're all in the same boat here. Help us out and hit that like button if you can. Helps us out a lot as a show, and of course the Stokastic channel. And make sure you subscribe as well. Let's talk about the Niners and the Eagles a little bit. And I think we have to mention right away, Jalen Hurts, the top projected QB on the slate, top projected player according to Stokastic. So that's something to note right away. Does seem like a spot, Neil, where you're going to see Jalen Hurts, I think, has some volatility potentially, but it's hard to ignore the rushing upside, hard to ignore his involvement on the year. Guy is running 11 times per game. A guy who's also got 41% of the rushing touchdowns on the year for the Eagles. So he's heavily involved enough to score in a variety of ways. That said, Neil, I kind of feel like Jalen Hurts is a variable spot where if the Niners D is as good as we saw last week against Dak, obviously forced them into some crucial mistakes in that game. Jalen Hurts, we know, has had accuracy issues. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. Like, I'm going to play him a lot, but I do think he comes up really easily on an optimizer, and that worries me about his field ownership. So how are you feeling about Jalen Hurts here? Are you willing to ride with him? How can you get different if you play Hurts? Just what's your overall dossier on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I'm with you. It is a little bit tough just because of the defense. Like, he does project the best. He is expensive. Obviously, he has the most rushing upside of any quarterback on this slate. It makes sense he's going to project well, but yeah, it's a high variance spot, as you said, because he is playing against this Niners defense, which is maybe the best defense in football. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're going to have a tough time with this Niners defense, or you are some of the time going to have a really tough time with this Niners defense. As you said, it's a high variance spot because we've got a great offense. Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, certainly one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the NFL, going up against one of the toughest defenses to face. So it's tough, but obviously he can get there. Yeah, ways to get different if you are playing Jalen Hurts. It's kind of hard to know what the field is going to do. Typically, I think one thing that Alex has been saying is he is more inclined now to overstack rather than understacking. Like, that's something the field doesn't want to do. So maybe you can overstack. Maybe one way to get different with Jalen Hurts is to play all of Smith, Goddard, and Brown in a lineup with Jalen Hurts. Maybe a lot of people don't want to do that because, well, he gets so much of his production on the ground, but would it really be I don't think you should be shocked if he throws a touchdown to each of those receivers if they do put up a big game. Now, obviously, it's a lot less likely against this Niners defense than it would be against basically any other defense in the NFL, but they're great. Philly has a great offense as well. It's certainly they're live to have multiple touchdowns through the air, and they have a number of capable pass catchers. So I think that's one way you could consider getting different, is overstacking Jalen Hurts with all of the big three, or you could mix in Buzz Watkins or maybe even one of the running backs if you want to. But yeah, that's probably the way I would think about getting different. Do you see it differently?
No, I think that's the right way to do it. I mean, I know you talk about it a lot. Alex talked about it a lot. The idea of cutting down that parlay you're making on a given lineup where you do have the QB in there. Theoretically, the QB is going to create value for at least one guy. And Jalen Hurts normally is creating value just for one guy, but there's been enough games recently, especially when they've pressed the ball downfield, which you kind of have to do to beat these Niners defense. Like that's what we saw. Jarrett Stidham came in with a game plan that was probably the best one Josh McDaniels had all season long. But the game plan was basically to force the ball downfield outside and give those guys a chance to make plays downfield. So I think in this spot, it does make the hand in the dirt kind of sense. And it also makes sense as well that the Eagles might be aggressive playing it downfield and then try to make the Niners beat them. The Niners are also probably going to play a little more aggressive downfield. They're both two great defenses, but I think that's where there is some variance in this game. I think, too, the fact that the AFC game, people are really targeting that one as the one you want to game stack. If you do game stack Eagles-Niners a little bit more and you still take, your Jamar Chase from that other game, maybe take a Pacheco or a McKinnon, just somebody else different as a Chiefs player, you're then getting the chance of capturing the upside of this game while still also being, pretty covered well for guys who can score in that late game. And I think that's like kind of the approach I'm feeling. But obviously, we're going to talk more about it in generalities. But how do you feel about that as an approach that's really overstacking this game?
I like it. Yeah. So I definitely fall into the mindset. I fall into the trap sometimes, particularly on big slates of just like playing the matchups more than I probably should. And especially on a 2-game slate, you got to keep in mind, there is a possibility that both of these games go under by, 7-10 points, what their total is, because we have tough defenses across the board. So although it seems more likely that Cincinnati Kansas City game goes off, which, I see it the same way as everybody else, it just looks like a better matchup, two, I would say better offenses overall. It's questionable, I guess, against worse defenses in that Kansas City Cincinnati game. So you look at it and it seems like there is a clearer path to that game going off with those offenses versus those defense than Philly, San Francisco. Obviously great offenses, a lot of great weapons on both of these offenses as well, but obviously a tough matchup. It's hard to envision Jalen Hurts putting up, the Eagles putting up 40 points in this game, but they don't even necessarily need to. If they put up 28 points, which is, a good game for them, but they don't need to have a great game to be the best offense on a 2-game slate. So I like the idea of, just hope that this game is the one that goes, 28-31, something like that. This San Francisco Philly game, nobody should be shocked if that happens. You look at the weapons on these teams, these are great offenses. So certainly that is a game that could go off. And we don't really know Mahomes' status. Maybe Mahomes is still a little bit affected by the leg. Maybe he's not as mobile. Maybe he's a little bit easier to sack. So maybe that game doesn't go off the way we're expecting it to. So I definitely love that idea of just overstacking this game in some lineups and hoping that, that Kansas City and Cincinnati game is the one that is held in check and that this game goes off. It's less likely, but it's something that the field is not going to be gravitating towards a San Francisco Philly stack. So I definitely like that idea as a way to get contrarian in a large field tournament.
We are talking about some of the top owned plays here. So one I'm just going to flag right away, Dallas Goedert. His ownership came down to the most recent run of ownership projections on Stokastic, but throughout the week, it's projected to be a 50% owned guy. Again, in the unrandomness or completely unrandom, uncapped crunch that I run before a show. Usually I do run 25 lineups there. Dallas Goedert in every single lineup. So I'm feeling, Neil, like he's going to come up a lot for the optimizer bros out there, which obviously a lot of people in this YouTube chat are going to be. How are you feeling about Dallas Goedert and as he relates to these Jalen Hurts stacks where Jalen Hurts top-owned QB, Dallas Goedert potentially a top-owned tight end? Are you willing to go heavy with those guys as a single stack, or is that right away you're just drawing dead because of being paired with likely a lot of the field?
I still think you're able to do it. I think it's a fine single stack. Probably not the first place I would go. Like if I were hand building a lineup, I'm not going to do a single stack with just Dallas Goedert because, as you said, a lot of people are going to go there just because of the pricing dynamics, among other things. Like Jalen Hurts, fairly expensive. Dallas Goedert, a way to save some money at tight end, so it's going to be a natural pair there. But I mean, Dallas Goedert. Honestly, pretty surprised to see we have Dallas Goedert optimal 44.6% of the time. I was not expecting that. That is a high percentage of the time that Dallas Goedert is optimal. I'm going to be including Dallas Goedert in a number of my Jalen Hurts stacks. More often than not, I think I will be including a receiver as well, or in lieu of Dallas Goedert. But certainly he looks great. I mean, we actually have positive leverage. We have Dallas Goedert 44.3% projected ownership, 44.6% chance of being optimal. Obviously, that's like about as neutral as you can get. So calling it positive, a little bit of an overstatement. We have neutral though. We have him optimal 45% of the time. I think I'm most likely. I would expect that I'm going to be under the field on Dallas Goedert just because of how high his ownership is getting, and I have some interest in playing some Kelsey, some Kittle, some Hurst. Our tools don't seem to love George Kittle. I think that is one place I'm going to get different. I think I like George Kittle a little bit better than our tools tend to. I think just because he's done so well with Brock Purdy, there seems to be some kind of a connection there. Purdy seems to like targeting George Kittle, so I think that I like him a little bit better than Tool. So I think I'm inclined to likely get a little bit under the field on a Dallas Goedert and a little bit over on George Kittle. So that's probably the one spot that I, or at least one of the few spots I see myself kind of going against the boom bust tool today. Typically, I'm relying on that for making a lot of my decisions, but I think that it's a little bit fragile. We just don't know what to expect with Kittle and Purdy at this point, and I think I'm willing to go over the field on Kittle to the detriment of my Dallas Goedert shares.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on it. I think Kittle, to me, just the fact that he doesn't come up at all with stochastic projections kind of makes me go, all right, he probably doesn't project that well. We know what the ceiling is. We know he can have that upside. We know there's also some risk that he could be in the block a little bit more against a, pretty aggressive Eagles defense. That does offer some risk there. But I agree with you that I think Kittle's probably a little bit under-owned. And I think Goddard's a little bit over-owned. The one thing that does spook me a little bit, the only positive tight end DVOA matchup in this game is also going to be for Dallas Goedert going against the Niners. They're 13th in the league, giving up it's a negative DVOA boost, but it's still the best matchup in this one. So in terms of EPA, though, actually a pretty big jump. Estimated points added to tight end. 0.19 EPA is actually the weakest spot for the Niners defense on the year. People tend to think it's outside. We see DK Metcalf have good days there, but they do tend to struggle a little bit against tight end. So I think Dallas Goedert, one of those plays that going to be highly owned, but definitely some risk because he probably got the best matchup on the board. Highest owned running back, Neil, looks like it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. Not far behind, though, Joe Mixon. You got to imagine on DraftKings, you're going to see a good amount of McCaffrey Mixon builds as well. You had to nickel and dime these guys a little bit here because it is a tournament show. Some ownership going to McCaffrey's way. I think some concern as well with how that game went at the end of last week with Dallas, where he was basically just playing the third downs, could not get out there for the first and second downs because of the calf issues he's had. Didn't practice all week with those calf issues, but that spooks me enough, Neil, where he's coming up a lot. I think very easily to get into lineups because of the price tag and the projection on him. If he's going to be owned by half the field, I feel like Eli Mitchell should probably be owned a little bit more just to try to get that leverage, or maybe you just take McCaffrey on lineups. That's how I'd nickel and dime McCaffrey. But how do you feel about him and Mixon? And I guess if you had to choose one in a Sophie's choice, McCaffrey or Mixon, which way would you go?
Yeah, honestly, it is so tough just because McCaffrey has been limited all week. I think that he is expected to go, but Eli Mitchell is also, I believe, listed as questionable. So it's like, well, it's going to come down somewhat, I think, to the news that we get. I think Eli Mitchell, like he was limited again on Friday. There's some chance that Eli Mitchell really does not play in this game, which sucks because it was somebody that I wanted to go to at 4,900. I have definitely some interest in Eli Mitchell if he is healthy. Yeah, it's definitely a tough choice between McCaffrey and Mixon. I guess I got to default to McCaffrey. We've got some positive leverage there, 50% projected ownership, 53% chance of being optimal. But Mixon projects really well. We haven't projected for 50% ownership, 45% chance of being optimal. Obviously, the much better matchup playing against Kansas City as opposed to the Eagles. So it really is a tough call for me between McCaffrey and Mixon. I think just because of his volume, I'm more inclined, and his talent, his volume and his talent, I am more inclined to go to McCaffrey despite the tough matchup and the higher price tag. But, given the $1,500 price discount, the matchup for Mixon, it's a little bit closer than you might think for me. But yeah, I'm still going to break the tie towards McCaffrey just because of the talent, the volume. He can do it against anybody, even against this Philly defense. But I do like some Mixon as well. How do you feel about it?
So I always love on these shows when dating back to when I did a bunch of shows with Alex, always love going against the guy who's won millions and me just charming my way through like playing DFS. That said, I'd go Mixon's way a little bit more. I think the injury issues aren't accounted for with this ownership. And I think McCaffrey, just seeing him last week where those drives mattered a lot for the Niners and he was not out there. It was Eli Mitchell getting the carries. I think he ended up with just shy of 15 carries in that game. And Mitchell, as Neil pointed out, is injured with a groin too. But the fact they were willing to put him out there for the first and second downs, and then McCaffrey, it's like, okay, we need you here because you're the better pass catching back, I think stuck with me enough that I think there's some life in Mitchell, and there really isn't as much life for P. Ryan compared to Joe Mixon. Like, I think P. Ryan's a fine play, but I think it's hard for me to see how Mixon's not out there getting the lion's share of the work at the very least, unless the Bengals are playing from behind all game, playing a lot of third downs, playing a lot of deep down and distance kind of drives. So I think Mixon's the better play. That said, they are going to both be 50% projected owned for a reason. So one way to get different would, I think, be to just try to play one of those guys in some lineups. But we all know how that goes from here. You have a super chat, though, that hit on real fast from Jillian Sullivan saying, do we have a Neil's nobody for a 2-game slate? Neil, I don't want to break format here because, as you guys know, I'm a slave to the run sheet. But I do want to give you a chance here, Neil, to identify who could be a Neil's nobody in these plays.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give you one right away that you were just saying you don't have interest in. I do have some interest in Samaje Perine. So you and I getting off to a start where we are disagreeing a little bit here, just because we have Perine coming in at 12.6% projected ownership. We actually have some negative leverage there, but you gotta, you're not going to find many players who are not getting a ton of ownership where you have a lot of positive leverage. I think Perine is a place you can certainly consider at 12.6% projected ownership, just because, I mean, last week he only had 7 carries, but he did run routes on 43% of passing plays for the Bengals. I think that he's played a bigger role for the Bengals since that period when Mixon was out. I think Perine played well enough that the Bengals have just decided, hey, this guy is a great player. We should have him in on the field a little bit more than we had previously. So I think that Mixon has taken on a little bit of, Perine has taken on a bigger role in recent weeks, just running, the past 2 weeks in must-win games, 50% of passing plays he ran routes, and then 43%. So he's a little bit more involved in the passing game. Maybe he's the first one that comes to mind, also just because I was already planning on giving my my Perine input. Let me see if there's any other players that I have made.
I mean, Perine's a good one. I think there's a logic to it. I would like to take Mixon because I just think that he's the stronger play. But I think you're right. Like, I shouldn't treat Perine as a throwaway because he does get that pass game work, does get that third down work regardless. So I think he's a very fine nobody, even though there might be more of a nobody that I think you might tap on next.
There might be, I'm not sure who you have in mind, but I'm sure we'll get there. Yeah, so just looking at, so I switched over to receivers just because I think that I'm a little bit more likely. I always play some of these Kansas City receivers at low ownership. Justin Watson, if he does play, is going to be a Neil's nobody for me. He is questionable right now, so we don't know he's going to play. But even last week, Justin Watson ran 43% of routes. He ran 46% the week prior to that against Las Vegas. But that was a must-win game last week against Jacksonville. We had Justin Watson out there running 16 routes, 43% of passing plays, running routes. Particularly if Mecole Hardman is out. If Mecole Hardman is in, it becomes a little bit thinner just because maybe Mecole Hardman eats into it a little bit. But I do like me some Justin Watson as a player who nobody's going to play. We haven't projected for 5% ownership. I've got some interest there. Yeah, I'd say those are the top of the board. There's obviously, Quez Watkins, Juwan Jennings. We have them just going a little bit higher owned than Justin Watson. So those guys are fine plays, but I think I'd rather go to Watson. Did you have anybody else in mind you want to talk about?
Well, I have one other game format in mind here, Neil, and I don't know if you've heard of this site that we call them Prize Picks here over at Stokastic. And I was actually trying to feverishly look up something for Prize Picks related to Samaje Perine, Neil, where if you played on Prize Picks today, you could find a line there, 16.5 receiving yards for Perine. Would you take the over on that one?
I think I would. 16.5 feels like a good line for Perine. Of course, I should look at what we have him projected for, which, man, I'm not good at looking up individual stat projections. I'm inclined to take the over. Let's just go with it. Yeah, I think over 16.5 against this Kansas City defense. I think Perine's going to be out there running routes, and 16.5, that you can do that in a single catch, probably 2 or 3 catches. So, yeah, I take the over there.
So you can see the Perine prop here coming up on the screen. Of course, at Prize Picks, you can play all sorts of props on there. You can play fantasy lines. You can play straight up lines. It's a lot of different picks you can make for yourself on Prize Picks. And the good news, if you play over at Prize Picks, you get yourself 1 free month of Stokastic plus Platinum and up to a $100 deposit match bonus as well with Prize Picks. So that's a really good deal there. Of course, get the data that we're talking about, all the projections we're talking about, the boom bust data, all these fantastic tools. The Prize Pick prop tool also up on Stokastic as well. So lots of great ways to play on there. They have daily prop-based contests, no sharks, no optimizers, no mass entries. Neil, you're not welcome on Prize Picks, in fact, because you are, in fact, a shark and a mass entry guy. So how do you feel that you've been officially banned from Prize Picks?
I'm very sad about it. It's a great site. We've got a great deal. So it's unfortunate they're not allowing me to play on Prize Picks.
Yeah, no sharks over there. You can swim freely with 5-player lineups. You can net yourself up to 10x your entry free and use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries as well. That's the Prize Picks difference. So go play over on Prize Picks. And again, 1 free month Stokastic plus Platinum, as well as $100 or up to a $100 deposit match if you deposit $100 of your own. So play over there, give it a shot. And again, go check out what Mike is looking at on the screen right now. Lots of tempting picks to make on Prize Picks for yourselves out there right now. And thanks to them for sponsoring this show that Neil and I can get together as a meeting of the minds here. Only thanks to the courtesy courtesy of Prize Picks. It's funny though, Neil, they're indirectly paying you perhaps, but yet they don't want you on their site. That feels unfair by Prize Picks.
And they're certainly not, if they're not allowing me, they're definitely not allowing Alex on there.
No, he's been banned. He's been thrown out like DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. They just grab him by the nape of his neck and sling him out the door. Other plays, Neil, that we haven't touched on. Here's one that I think is not going to be highly owned, but I think we need to hit on here. Maybe we could transition to the contrarian plays. Is there a world in which you would play a man who had less than 10 half-point PPR points last week, a man who killed countless playoff best ball entries, including a great many of my own that were lovingly crafted on some sites out there, the man known as Big Lock Brock, let's call him Brock Purdy? Are you willing to go his way this week? Because nobody wants to play this man. And it does seem like a lot of sharp football minds out there have talked about the idea of just trying to force the ball downfield as a game plan to keep the Eagles honest and give Brock Purdy and his offense some room. Can you play him, Neil, at under 15% projected ownership on Stokastic?
Yeah, you can play some BCB. Yeah, we've got him. Yeah, I'm seeing 16%. Maybe I need to refresh, but we've got him. We've got the Niners as a top stack 10% of the time. However, we do also have the Niners as a top value stack 16.8% of the time. So you can save a little bit of money playing Brock Purdy. What do we got his salary at? I'm seeing hang on,
5,300.
5,300. So just relative to the other quarterbacks on the slate, you're just running into a completely different build if you play Brock Purdy, because he's 5,300. Joe Burrow, the next cheapest, at 6,800. So definitely viable to play Brock Purdy, in part just because you're running into a different construction when you play Brock Purdy versus these more expensive quarterbacks. You can stack Brock Purdy with Christian McCaffrey right away. That's a nice build there. Allows you to use some of that salary on Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, like pairing him with George Kittle. You and I both talked about we've got some interest in George Kittle. I think you can certainly make that pairing, Brock Purdy with George Kittle. So yeah, my guess is this might be a spot where I am over the field. Not necessarily, might be close to the field, but I'm definitely going to be playing some Brock Purdy, and there is some chance that I end up going a little bit overboard there.
Do we think? Sorry, go ahead. With Brock Purdy, I don't want to cut you off there, but I do think what you talked about with Jalen Hurts seems like it could be the point with Purdy. I guess you don't really have to overstack him because the salary savings could be enough to get you onto some different lineup constructions. But are you viewing Purdy as a guy where if you have him at QB, maybe you're more inclined to play 3 Niners with him because that's going to be a vessel. He's going to be basically a vessel to all this greatness around him. And I think that's the one way Brock Purdy could work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a number of Niners that we really like. I mean, we really like Christian McCaffrey. You and I both really like George Kittle. And then, of course, Debo and Ayuk are guys you can pair him with as well. If you really want to go to Juwan Jennings, you can do that too. Yeah, I think it does make some sense to pair Brock Purdy with, 3 players. You could fill up one of those running back spots with McCaffrey, throw in George Kittle, and then one of Debo or Ayuk, and hope that he throws, 3 touchdowns, one to each of those guys. Certainly viable, especially on a slate that might be very low scoring. I think that it does make some sense to overstack Brock Purdy a little bit, especially because he's going to allow you to play your McCaffreys and Kittles.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. So let's talk about some of the low-owned plays, some contrarian plays here. And I guess, Neil, I'll kind of give you a general one before we talk about the ownership projections and guys who are just low-owned and maybe could be worth jamming into a lineup. Is there any overall approach you're seeing in terms of a contrarian play where, we talk a lot about for showdowns, you have the onslaughts. Those onslaughts tend to be a little bit under-owned compared to what their win rate normally is in a showdown slate. For this particular slate, is there something you're seeing in terms of an overall build approach that you would find to be kind of inherently contrarian?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about overstack, and I think you can do that even on this 2-game slate. One way to get different is just to overstack with your quarterback, play 3 pass catchers along with your quarterback, maybe even 4 if you want to get totally nuts. If you want to play your Joe Burrow with all of his pass catchers, something you could consider doing. That's something I did actually in some of my building on underdog. Those drafts, I tried really overstacking quarterbacks just to get different. I think that's something you could also consider here. We've got a number of ways. I mean, obviously the Chiefs, a great spot to do it just because, you want to play your Travis Kelce, but you could throw in a Jerick McKinnon into the stack. We talked about the 5 different wide receiver options at Kansas City that you can consider throwing into a stack as well. So definitely one way to get different is to overstack a little bit. Another thing that I like to do on these short slates is this is a spot where I will play defenses against my quarterback and against the several players from the opposing offense, just because you're essentially hoping they're like, say it's Brock Purdy playing him against the Eagles defense. You're hoping that he throws for 3 touchdowns and also throws a pick 6. And that might be all it takes for one of these defenses on a 2-game slate. If one of these defenses has a defensive touchdown, that might be enough to make them optimal. So I think it's definitely viable to play your defense against multiple players from the opposing offense. And I'm willing to also play them against the opposing quarterback, even despite some obvious negative correlation on a 2-game slate. It's, I think, a unique enough thing that not enough people are doing that it's still certainly viable. So I'd say that's one way I'm getting unique, is just playing defense against opposing offense. Overstacking defense against opposing offense. I'd say those are the biggest ways that I'm getting different. I'm also just allowing, in general, like on a full slate, I'll set a rule that I can't have more than 2 wide receiver, running back, or tight ends from a team without the quarterback. I think that you could on this slate play 3 different Chiefs players without Patrick Mahomes, 4 different Chiefs players potentially without Patrick Mahomes. That's another way to, or other quarterbacks as well. Play some offensive players without their quarterback. I think you can overstack without the quarterback is something you could consider doing also.
All right, so let's go through, and I'm gonna Ryan in the chat, I'm seeing, asking if we're getting money time hat. I'm actually wearing the hat just in case somebody asks, so I'll flip the hat here. We'll declare this the official money time here. Player nice. Cha-ching sound effects. Mike was so quick on the ball for the Fresh Prince stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think he has my years old money time package that Jordan Klein used to lovingly prepare for me. Sadly,
it's a great hat.
Thank you. It's $10 on Amazon if you want to get your own. I think Stokastic at one point when I was here full time was going to look into selling them, but they couldn't find a supplier. Created quality money hats. And Neil, if you're going to wear a money hat, only the best out there, like a Stanzo brand fedora for the.
You got to show your Stanzo brand fedora. I got a million of them I could sell.
But not the meatballs that look like pieces of shit. Neil, I'm going to list off some players here that are under 10% projected ownership according to Stokastic. And what I want you to do here is give me the gladiator style thumbs up or thumbs down. If you want to buy in on their ownership level higher, give me the thumbs up. If you think you should be less owned than the field, or if you think you'll have them less in your lineups than the field will have them, then give them the thumbs down. Well, let's do this way because I think this will be the most helpful thing for people. So Tyler Boyd, we have projected just under 19% ownership. And of course, get the Stokastic Plus data for yourself out there if you want to play along with us at home. But Neil, what's the rating for Tyler Boyd?
Love it. Tyler Boyd against this Kansas City defense. Yeah, he's a player that I'm definitely going to be over the field on. Man, he's only 3,800. I did not realize how low owned he's coming in. 19% projected ownership at 3,800 for Tyler Boyd, the wide receiver 3 on this team. Did absolutely nothing last week, so people are going to be disinclined to play Tyler Boyd, but absolutely a player that I like playing against his Chiefs. He's obviously he's typically more involved than he was last week. I don't think that it's something like, I don't think Joe Burrow is going away from him because it's the playoffs. I think it was just happenstance that he only had 2 targets last week. But if you just look at his game logs the past 3 weeks in must-win games, 82% route participation, 83% route participation, and 89% last week against Buffalo. Only had 2 targets, 1 reception in that game. Obviously, that's a little bit of a fluke, and I think that against this Kansas City defense, Tyler Boyd is somebody that I'm going to love. He's if you want to count him, he's not a Neil's nobody. He's not under 10% owned, which is where I kind of draw that line. But he's probably the player of these kind of low-owned, cheaper guys that I'm going to be most above the field on. I like Tyler Boyd quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think one thing that jumped out to me with these matchups too is that despite these all being great defenses, besides the Chiefs, all of them on the year have been really strong defenses. That said, every team in this particular round struggles against slots, all positive EPAs to slot players, which I do think could benefit Tyler Boyd. Last week, we did see Jamar Chase moving into the slot a little bit more. Is there a way to get him away from Tre'Davious White? This week, I think you're going to see Jamar Chase run a little bit more outside where the Chiefs have been weaker. As a result, you should see more slot plays underneath for Tyler Boyd. So I would agree with Neil's thumbs up here. People into this, Chronic Smith asking, are the Lions ready? I don't think we're literally going to feed these guys to the Lions, but if they don't perform well in our lineups, Neil, I suppose we have the right if we still need to.
We have to at least think about feeding these guys to the Lions.
So let's go to the next one. And honestly, I like your approach too of the steady thumb in the middle. Your showmanship right on line
it's
here.
The gladiator. I thought that's what we're doing. Yeah.
All right, Isaiah Pacheco coming up next year. He's projected for 18% ownership, a pivot play to a higher owned Jerick McKinnon, perhaps. Neil, where would you go with your thumb?
Man, this is honestly a tough one. I wish I'm sad that I have my thumb here because I would otherwise be looking up stats on Isaiah Pacheco to really break the tie here for me. I think it's going to be a thumbs up though for me. Not as strong as Tyler Boyd, maybe more like this. Maybe not quite as strong as a Tyler Boyd, but we've got it. Pacheco projected for just 18% ownership, 22% chance of being optimal. He is still the bell cow. I don't know, bell cow might be a strong word here, but he gets the bulk of the carries for the Chiefs. I don't think CEH is going to play in this game. Even if he does, I don't think CEH gets much run. I think that I'm still inclined to play some Pacheco at 18% projected ownership. I think I'll be a little bit above the field, most likely on Pacheco. I don't feel as strongly about it as Boyd, but I do like me some Pacheco. How are you feeling about Pacheco?
So I think one thing that jumps out to me is if Mahomes is banged up, which we're assuming a high ankle sprain, we've seen knockout guys for weeks this season. But I think one thing that jumps out is that you might not see McKinnon get as big of a boost. You might see more of Mahomes not being able to run on the plays that he would normally be running on. And as a result, those could be Pacheco plays a little bit more than we've seen in the past. So I think Pacheco could actually have some check down upside that he perhaps normally doesn't have. And I still think Pacheco is basically the luckiest guy in the NFL. You come in as a last round pick, you end up on this team, and they're like, yeah, you got to look like Tyreek Hill. We'll just keep giving you plays
Right.
and hope it works out.
Yeah.
And
I think that's exactly what it was, right? He's wearing the number. He was smart enough to wear the number. It's just like Ben Skoranek on the Rams wore number 18 to Cooper Kupp's 10. So it's just like, oh, the quarterback to season. He looks the same, like at the right angle. It looks like he's wearing number 10. Yeah, smart move there by Pacheco to just wear that number 10 for the Chiefs.
But I think the point is that he's on the field enough and there's some upside there. So I think I'd give him a thumbs up as well. I think he should be above the field on Pacheco, even though not the sexiest play. I think we all enjoy McKinnon's what he does as a player a little bit more. But that said, Pacheco just needs to get in the end zone once or twice, and that's probably enough to give you something meaningful on this slate. We'll skip over the defenses. Kadarius Toney, Neil, a man who's going to be projected for 16% ownership, according to Stokastic. He is a player that gets a lot of design plays for himself, a player that also probably steamed up a little bit just because of the name value. Where is he going to land here on the thumb meter?
All right, so this is a tough one because if he does come in at 16% ownership, it's going to be a thumbs up for me. I'm not sure I buy it. I think that Kadarius Toney could come in higher than we're expecting him to, just because, as you said, he's got that name. He's 3,700. People see his involvement in the red zone. If he does come in a little bit higher than we are currently projecting for, then it would be a thumbs down for me. But at 16%, it's borderline, I guess. I guess I'm not taking it. We actually have negative leverage even at 16%. So maybe it might be slightly under even at 16% for Kadarius Toney, just because you look at his numbers, he's really not as involved as I think people think he is. Just even looking last week against Jacksonville, meaningful game. He ran 11 routes. He had a 29.7% route participation. Of course, he did have 7 targets somehow on 11 routes run. Kadarius Toney had 7 targets. I don't think that is likely to keep up. Maybe it's the routes run that go up, but I don't think he's going to have 7 targets for every 11 routes he runs. This was the second most he's run in a game since joining this team. He's such a tough call just because it's really hard to know if the Chiefs are going to play him more, but they didn't last week, which was honestly, I think the field was anticipating that Kadarius Toney would play more, and the field played some Kadarius Toney, and then he still only ran 30% of routes. The field kind of got a little bit lucky with the 7 targets, 5 receptions, but I think I'd be inclined to take the slight under on 16% Kadarius Toney, in part because I do think that it's likely it comes up in higher than that. But how do you feel about Toney?
I think it's interesting to note that they do try to feed him the ball. That said, I mean, we saw last week, I think Juju was close to 24% owned, and that was a little bit bigger slate, but not really. I think that's something that sticks with me. I think people just don't want to play Juju anymore, even though he's running routes. And MVS too, I think he's going to be the guy we touch on next in this thumbs up, thumbs down game. I think MVS is a guy that I have no faith in at this point, but I know he's going to be low owned. Whereas Kadarius Toney, like Neil's talking about, I think people see the amount of targets that he's getting. It's just unsustainable relative to how many plays he's getting, especially if Hardman's back in. I think that's where it scares me. So let's do the MVS vote here, because I think Toney would be a thumbs down. Neil, which way would you go for MVS at a 15% projected ownership?
Yeah, 15%. And as you said, I buy it a little bit more. So it's going to be a thumbs up for me on MVS. As you said, people don't want to play MVS. I've been playing him all year. He's been letting me down all year. I should probably jump off the bandwagon at some point. But if he's going to be 15% owned on a 2-game slate, with the involvement that Marquez Valdes-Scantling has on this offense, running more than 60% of routes still, even the past 2 weeks, he's running 60% plus of routes for the Chiefs in one of the best offenses in the NFL. He has not done it at all. Only 2 targets last week, but 2 weeks prior to that, 6 and 7 targets. I think he's still very live to score a touchdown, to score a long touchdown, and to pay off that salary at what is now going to be minimal ownership. So for me, I think I'd rather play MVS than Kadarius Toney in a vacuum at similar ownership. And I think that there's a much better chance that Kadarius Toney's ownership gets steamed up than MVS. So I'm going into the slate expecting to play more of MVS than Kadarius Toney, even though it is true that I think that they do scheme to get Kadarius Toney the ball more than they clearly don't for MVS. He's not getting a ton of targets. They are trying to get Kadarius Toney the ball, but still it's unlikely that he's going to have another 7 targets if he is only playing 11 snaps in this game. Whereas MVS, I mean, he played 23 snaps in the last game. It's more likely that he's going to have more targets. So for me, I'd rather play MVS than Kadarius Toney. Not really by that wide of a gap, but just because I think that it's more likely that Tony gets steamed up a bit. How do you feel about MVS?
I'm with you. I think he's worth a shot. I mean, it just feels like, there's takes in the chat even that I think back it out, where Optimal Prime is saying they didn't trade for Tony to not utilize him in the playoffs. If Casey goes off, Tony will have something to do with it. Like, that's an outrageous take to me, because I think if one thing that Mahomes has shown is that he's not really forcing the ball to any single target, and that includes MVS, but it also includes Kadarius Toney. It also sometimes includes Travis Kelce, though in the playoffs, I do expect he'll be targeted about as well as any of these guys will be. But that said, I just think it's a matter of the route opportunity. Like, MVS can get out there, and I think one thing too is that MVS kind of has been running cold. He's not getting a lot of targets, but when he is running hot, I think you see him get fed the ball a little bit more. So that's all it takes, is him having success outside against, two Bengals receivers or two Bengals corners rather that are not that great, that I think might have a tough time against MVS's speed. So I think I'm willing to take the Flyers there. And just, again, like, when you see the public takes about Tony, they love Tony, they don't like MVS, they don't like Juju. Just play the guys the public doesn't love and just hope the variance runs in your favor.
Yeah, and can I actually add a point, because we got Sean V in chat saying they use Kadarius Toney in the red zone, and that is true. And I thought it was more than he has. Just looking at the past 4 weeks, he was not targeted in the red zone at all last week. Kadarius Toney, one time the week before that, 2 times the week before that, and then 1 time the week before that. So he's used somewhat in the red zone. He certainly is live to score a touchdown, but it's honestly not to the extent that I thought. Like, in my mind, they go to Kadarius Toney over and over, just like what's his face from the Packers, the rookie. Is it Justin? No. Christian Watson on the Packers. It seemed like they just really wanted to get him a touchdown for some reason, and then he just trips over himself over and over. Kadarius Toney, in my mind, he's the same way, but he's only been targeted 4 times in the red zone over the past 4 weeks. Kadarius Toney twice in that same span, so it's really not as big of a gap as in my mind. I was thinking it had been. So yeah, used in the red zone, but he's not. It's not like he's Travis Kelce, where he's just being targeted over and over in the red zone. So maybe not as big of a factor as people might think it is.
Let's hit some of these other guys here. We talked about Brock Purdy already, but in terms of these contrarian plays, another guy that I'm curious for a thumbs up, thumbs down on, I think I know which way this one's going to go. Samaje Perine, $4,500, 12.6% projected ownership on Stokastic. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Is he surviving, Neil?
Oh, he's surviving. Yeah, he's one of those, as I said, one of those spots that I'm going a little bit against the tools. We actually have negative leverage there, 12.6% projected ownership, 10% chance to be an optimal. But just given how involved he has been recently, just running routes, and now he's in this matchup with Kansas City, where it's a great matchup from just the perspective of it's not a great defense for Kansas City. It's the worst defense on this slate. But on top of that, Kansas City is likely to be scoring some points. The Bengals are going to need to be keeping up with the Chiefs. They might be playing from behind later on in the game. And Joe Mixon is just not their pass catching back. He's not as involved as Samaje Perine is. Perine had 5 targets last week. He's running routes. He ran 43% of passing plays. Perine was running routes last week. So I think that the game environment sets up really well for Perine, just because bad defense, even in a neutral game script, like, they use Perine. It's not like he's somebody that they only reserve for when they're playing from behind. He's generally involved in the game anyway. But then on top of that, I think we have the extra out of potentially they're playing from behind in the fourth quarter. They go to Perine a little bit more. So I do like Perine. I think I'm going to have more than 12% of him on this slate.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair ownership tag for him, and I think it could be worth it, honestly, given the mix in ownership, like we talked about the Elijah Mitchell, where I'm going to talk about here next in this game. But I think just trying to get a little bit more of those guys, a little bit less of the bell cow backs. Obviously, Mixon and McCaffrey are the top play, is going to be very highly owned for a reason. But on this slate, we're just trying to get different enough for a 2-gamer and siphon enough away that'll give us the opportunity to move ahead of the rest of the field. And I think Perine gives you that opportunity. So, Neil, you sold me on it, even if the prize picks will still throw you out for trying to bet Perine there. Elijah Mitchell, let's talk about him here. We'll speed round through some of these guys after him, because I think he's the last truly relevant player, but he's coming in at 10% projected ownership, did get a lot of carries last week. Neil, thumbs up, thumbs down for one Elijah Mitchell?
It's a slight thumbs down for me on Elijah Mitchell. I think I'm going to be slightly under the field there, which kind of surprises me, just because, yeah, he is one of the more involved, like, backup running backs. It is a really tough matchup with Philadelphia. He, as you said, he did have 14 carries last week. He was very involved. He also ran, 3 routes, not very involved in the passing game. I in my mind, the week prior to that, he was very involved in the passing game. He did have 3 targets against Seattle, but that was still on just 4 routes run. So that was a little bit fluky how involved he was in the passing game in that game. I think the injury concern is what is driving me towards the under a little bit on Mitchell. He is somebody that I would normally have some interest in, but the injury concern plus the tough matchup, I think Eli Mitchell, I'm willing to go a little bit under the field at 10%, just because I think that He's questionable coming in. I think there is some chance that he plays, but is still just more of an emergency. Like, it doesn't actually get much run coming in with a little bit of an injury tag. So I think I'm disinclined to play a ton of Eli Mitchell in this spot, particularly again because that matchup. Like, even if he does get on the field for 14 carries, he might not do anything with those 14 carries against this Philadelphia defense. So yeah, I think I'm taking the slight under on Eli Mitchell at 10%.
Or in our final five guys, Neil, just give me a quick speed round here. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Juwan Jennings, these are all under 10% owned plays. So again, if you want to really get contrarian here, you can throw these guys in a lineup. But Juwan Jennings, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a slight thumbs down for me on Juwan Jennings as well, coming in at 8.7%. I'm not going to be much under that. Man, it is tough because we do only have a 2-game slate to get different. You do need to play some of these guys. So I can't say with certainty that I'm going to be under the field on Juwan Jennings, but we do have him coming in a little bit over-owned, 8.7% projected ownership, 7.4% chance of being optimal. He is the number 3 receiver for the Niners. So theoretically, he should have a little bit more involvement, but he just hasn't really been getting targeted all that much recently. He hasn't had many big games with Debo involved for the Niners. Last week, he ran routes on 52% of passing plays. The week prior to that, 48.4. So it's a fair number, I would say. I don't have a strong take one way or the other. I think the field has it about right on Juwan Jennings. He did have 5 targets, I should say, against Seattle in week 19, 5 targets, including 1 in the red zone. But in general, just not getting targeted a ton, and it's a tough spot. So it's a pretty neutral play for me, to be honest. I'm not taking a huge stand one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. If he leaks into a few lineups, I won't care, but I certainly wouldn't force my way to him. Same thing for me with this next guy, Quez Watkins. Neil, thumbs up, thumbs down on Quez Watkins.
Yeah, it's a very similar play to me. Like, these guys are both like, yeah, they're not the quarterback's favorite place to go. They're, the 4th option, I would say, as far as receivers for both of these quarterbacks. I think I'm also inclined to go slight thumbs down on Quez Watkins. He actually only ran 7 routes last week, 28% route participation. So if I break the tie there in favor of Juwan Jennings, I'm not sure what happened there. I don't remember any kind of injury or anything. I don't remember hearing about anything. So if he's running just 7 routes last week, I think I'm more inclined to go to Juwan Jennings than I am Quez Watkins. So yeah, I'm going to go thumbs down on Quez. Maybe I'll go slight thumbs up then on Juwan Jennings, just because the recent trends have me going more in Jennings' favor.
And then the last 3 guys here, do any of them get a thumbs up from you? Noah Gray, Justin Watson, Kenneth Gainwell. Any of them seem worth it coming off I think Gainwell honestly will be steamed up a little bit just because of what he did last week and people not knowing that was kind of a blowout build thing. But Gray, Watson, Gainwell, any of them get a thumbs up?
Yeah, so Watson, I would say I actually would give a thumbs up to. People don't want to play Justin Watson. He's clearly not one of the top receivers for the Chiefs, but he did run 16 routes last week, 13 the week prior to that, 12 prior to that. So that's the past 2 weeks, over 40% route participation. He's on the field so much, and he has had some big plays. He just hasn't gotten into the end zone. So I think that I actually am inclined to go, slightly. We have negative leverage in the tools. I think I'm actually going to be above the field on Justin Watson, just because he has shown some big play ability. He is on the field quite a bit. So I'm more inclined to play some Justin Watson. Noah Gray is a questionable one. Let me look at his route participation last week, because he feels like he has become a part of this offense. He's actually a pretty similar play to me, to be honest, with Justin Watson. I just think that Noah Gray is a little bit more likely to get steam because he is a tight end. Noah Gray, 46% route participation last week against Jacksonville, had a couple targets. What do we have the ownership at there? Let me look.
He's under 5.
At under 5% ownership, I would have interest in Noah Gray.
Or I guess under 7, under 7.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I was seeing. So we've got him at right around 7% ownership. At 2,500, he fills up one of your tight end spots. He does have the added out of, he is I would say, the cheapest viable tight end. Obviously, Hayden Hurst I think he's questionable. So maybe Mitchell Wilcox comes into play. But Noah Gray, I would say, is the best of the $2,500 tight end options. And because it's only a 2-game slate, we have the added out of maybe the other tight ends just don't do anything. Like maybe even Travis Kelce puts up 8 or 9 fantasy points. Kittle, Goddard, all these other guys put up like a similar 5-6 fantasy points. Maybe all you need from Noah Gray is a few fantasy points, and you can even that's kind of an extreme example. Let's say Travis Kelce puts up 14 fantasy points, and Dallas Goddard and or George Kittle, one of them maxes out around 11 fantasy points. you might only need 4 fantasy points from Noah Gray to be optimal because you need to fill a tight end spot. It's a 2-game slate. It's possible that nobody at the tight end spot really does anything. So just having the 2,500 guy who does something, has more than 0, might be enough to differentiate you, let you play some lineups that you can't play with those other guys. So I actually think that I would be inclined to play over 7% Noah Gray.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of thought that was the case last week. Didn't really work out that well, but was involved like he was there, as Neil mentioned, high route participation. So I think he's not a minus EV player by any stretch, but certainly, tough to imagine him getting there and tough to justify him getting like a quarter of your lineups, but 10% feels probably about right.
Yeah.
One more last read here, of course, because you guys saw that great data that Neil and I just talked about. You can get it for yourself for 5 days free. Check the link in the description, but basically you can get all of the data that we talk about at Stokastic, including one new exciting tool, the lineup generator, which we're going to show you guys in a second and close out this show. But lots of great things. Honestly, I always use Stokastic even when I've been on my sojourns away to Football Outsiders and other places and all that. But I do think the data is the best in the industry, and they just keep adding new things that are designed to make your lives easier. I know in my days doing my Malcolm Gladwell certified 10,000 hours here on the Stokastic YouTube, people just want to be handed lineups. Now that lineup generator tool will do that for you, give you ways to make it more contrarian, give you ways to get in there and actually make some lineups that are going to be good. I saw in the NBA, apparently somebody won $50K just using the lineup generator the other day. That's not going to happen every night, but it does give you a chance to build really good lineups, and then you just swipe through them like you would on a dating app. So lots of great stuff on Stokastic. Get in the Stokastic Plus membership right now and check out the link in the description for 5 free days. Mike, if you can go to the lineup generator, that'd be great. Just let's pull this through fast here and let's see if we can sort through a few good lineups that Neil and I might actually want to play this one. And Neil, let's go for the main slate. Obviously, I think that's where we're going to go for DraftKings. We had a FanDuel. This isn't a FanDuel tournament show, right? I hope not.
We don't talk FanDuel here.
No, you might not even get your entries in. Who knows? Right. But yeah, let's go DraftKings main for this one. Yeah, let's just keep it moving here. Want to, Neil, any particular type you want to force in here? 2 main stacks?
Let's do 2-man stacks.
2-man? Yeah, 2-man stacks. All right. And we'll probably get a run back anyway. And let's go full contrarian, right? It's a tournament strategy show.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. You can see Mike pulling it up here on the screen. You can see how fast it works as well. It's doing the crunch for you. It's doing all the work for you. So all positive things help you build good lineups here, especially if you're a single entry bro. We had some single entry questions coming up before, but Mike will let that load and we'll get it coming up here in a second. But we got it done. Okay, cool. So here's the lineup on the screen. Let me see, boy, it's gonna be a tough one to read.
Yeah, we got Brock Purdy with Christian McCaffrey and Ayuk, and we don't have Kittle. We have Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. I like it. What do you think of that one? I don't know if I can see the full lineup here. I can't see what's after tight end. Mike,
can we scroll down and see who's in the flex?
Sure.
It's a Niner stack, which you
MVS.
talked about being suitably contrarian. So I think that works. And yeah, there's your flex position. So how does it feel now that you've seen the full lineup, deal? You got a taste for it.
Yeah, so we've got Purdy with McCaffrey and
MVS.
Yeah, we've got our MVS in there. Do we have both Pacheco and McKinnon? Oh, we lost the lineup.
They're there. I just ran 20. The one you're talking
got it.
about is lineup number 1.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit blurry for me, but yeah. So we've got Purdy with McCaffrey and Ayuk. I like that. McKinnon seems like a fine play to me. We've got Chase and Higgins with no Joe Burrow. I was going to say that's another way to get contrarian is play multiple, particularly in your Brock Purdy lineups, playing the more expensive guys, like overstacking one of the other games. Like people might not be inclined to play Chase with Higgins with no Burrow, but I think it's more viable on this slate because of the big price gap with Brock Purdy. If you play Brock Purdy and then overstack one of those other games, I think that it is viable. So yeah, I think this looks like a good lineup. I would use this lineup.
Yes, there you go. So check out the lineup generator tool again, part of that Stokastic Plus Platinum. And I think we have one more. Yeah. Well, first of all, guys, hit the like button before you go. We appreciate that a bunch. And let's also give a shout out to BetMGM. We talked about prize picks earlier, but BetMGM, another way to get some skin in the game this weekend. And there are still some great deals going on here. First bet insurance up to $1,000, 2 months Stokastic Plus Platinum free. So again, if prize picks is in your state, BetMGM probably is. So go check them out and also use the link below or use the promo code Platinum Sub on BetMGM to get in there. Neil, any more shows? You got some VODs coming up here, so plug those so people can check those out if they need more Neil Orfield in their lives.
Yeah, I already made my my VODs for the San Francisco Philadelphia game for how I'm setting up my fantasy cruncher. Those will be coming out I think this afternoon. I'm going to be doing the same for the Sunday Night Football slates at some point today. I'm also doing a No House Advantage show immediately following this one. That'll be a live show. And yeah, those are the primary things where I'm going to be doing a good amount of So Rare content coming up. So that's what I've got going on coming up. How about you, Spags?
Yeah, well, you can follow me at Chris Spags. I got nothing else on the channel coming up here. Check out my channel, Splash Play Pod on YouTube. And of course, follow Neil at PlayerQDFS. Follow me at Chris Spags. And check out the other Stokastic content coming up here. Wish you guys the best of luck. We'll catch you guys soon. Good luck out there. Bye.